I'm dedicating my presentation later on today to Karthik. I will be mentioning him. If you come, you'll see it. Okay, so after, big buildup always makes jokes funny, so here we go. Super continuous cloud elastic DevOpsy agile docious. That was a little play on Disney. I figure if I can get them all in one slide, then I don't have to worry about it for the rest of the presentation. So I've filled my buzzword quota for the hour. And if you want, this might make a fun drinking game if you have a death wish, because those words have been said a lot this week. Okay, buzzword quota reached. You may now proceed. All right, so what is Apache TomEE? Well, the short answer is it's Tomcat. We take Tomcat, we unzip it, we add some jars. I'll show you exactly what we do when we make TomEE to try and dispel any, not knowing what's going on under the covers kind of thing. It's web profile certified. It's Java EE6 web profile certified. It's using all Apache parts. So in TomEE, we take Tomcat and we add OpenJPA, OpenWebBeans, which is a CDI implementation. We add OpenEJB, MyFaces, and then in another distribution of TomEE, we add CXF and Apache ActiveMQ. And the thing that drives the project in terms of design, when we make decisions and how we do things technically, we always gravitate towards these three things, which is be small, so we don't want another large app server, we want a small one. Be certified, so in the end we can't choose not to, if the spec says we got to do it one way, we have to do it that way. By default, we can provide other options, but we always have to be certified. And then be Tomcat. So if we have ruined any part of Tomcat, so you don't feel like you're using Tomcat anymore, then we've completely failed. So I urge all of you, if you try out TomEE and you find something that, this is better in Tomcat, or we somehow manage to do something to mess up Tomcat, we're going to fix it. So please let us know. And, that's, it's a critical part of what we're trying to do. Yeah. Right. I'll show you those in a moment. Yeah. So what is a web profile? That kind of leads into that question real well. So a web profile is something that was created in Java EE6, and it was to address specifically the concern that Java EE had become too large. There's a lot of tech. Java EE is over 10 years old. There's a lot of things in there that you have to have for compliance reasons. You can't yank out major parts that people might be using just because they're old. So you have to keep things in there like JAX RPC, which is, if any of you had to work with JAX RPC, my condolences. That was not very good. Corba, still used by some people, but if you were to design a system completely from scratch, you wouldn't go, hey, let's use Corba. It's there for backwards for legacy reasons. CMP entity beans, this is the precursor to JPA. You don't use those if you can avoid it. And, so these are all things that are in the full profile, for example, that add a significant amount of weight to those installs that are not in the web profile. So the web profile is basically half of the full profile. The full profile is about 24 specifications around that, and the web profile is about 12. So when we created the web profile, and I've been helping out in the Java EE specifications since EE6, and I've been helping out with the EJB specifications since EJB 3. So I've been working in that space a long time, not just implementing EE servers, but to help, define the specifications. And when we created the web profile, it was sort of like manifest destiny. Someone had to certify Tomcat eventually, because it was sort of made to do that, made to have these small footprints. But it's also missing some really good things. So in the web profile is not JAX-RS. That will be in the web profile in Java EE7, but in Java EE6, JAX-RS is not in the web profile. JAX-WS That is not in the web profile either in Java E6 or Java E7. It's going to stay in the full profile. And JMS, that's a really core popular one that's not in the web profile. That's outside the web profile. So to lead into the question, there are a couple flavors of TomEE. Yeah, right, and that's primarily for certification, legal reasons. And it does make things easier, in terms of giving people smaller footprint servers. So we have the web profile certified version of TomEE, and that includes the standard technologies, JPA, CDI, EJB, JSF, Bean validation, and Java Mail, which is actually not in the web profile, but we add that to our web profile server because it's, 500K. It's very small, and it's very useful. So that's in the certified version of TomEE. We just now released today TomEE 1.5. We jumped up the numbers because we did a lot of development between the 1.0. And that includes everything that's in TomEE web profile plus JAX-RS. And it's a stripped down version of CXF because Apache CXF is rather large. It's like 4 megabytes or something. So with TomEE JAX-RS, it's another distribution that includes the entire web profile plus JAX-RS, and that's also certified. And then TomEE Plus includes everything that's in the first 2 stacks, plus JAX-WS, the connector architecture, and JMS. And that one is not certified because you have to, certification works like this. If you include 5 technologies, all 5 of them have to pass. And if that's the minimum bar, say the web profile, then that's fine. But if you include a 6th technology and it's not in the web profile and it doesn't pass its respective sections of the TCK, it doesn't matter. If all the previous ones are exactly the same and still pass, you can't call it certified. So it's not certified, but it passes the same tests as the first 2 stacks pass. Eventually, we would like to certify it, but it hasn't been a huge focus of the project currently. TomEE is having its birthday this week here at JavaOne. We announced the very first release of Apache TomEE last year at JavaOne. I gave a talk, and it was the very first release, the very first certified version of TomEE. So it's when it made its debut. We've had a pretty crazy year. So I would to be candid about the releases and things like that, I would say that the first beta that we did was, obviously certified, but it was a beta, and it wasn't as fast as we wanted it to be. Beta 2 was significantly faster. The 1.0 final was leaps and bounds faster. That's when we really hit our stride. That was in April. We got so much feedback off that one that it was hard to close the lid and kick out a release on that. We finally did that. We got that out, and that was, it says yesterday, but that actually got put up today. You know how things never go quite as quickly as you want them to. Anyway, and so, the theme of that, the 1.5, we'll see what it has to be. 1.0, there's a lot of gap closing that we did. People trying to migrate apps from Tomcat, tackling common issues. People trying to migrate apps from JBoss to Glassfish, tackling common issues. Ironically, we have far fewer issues coming from the JBoss Glassfish side than we have from the Tomcat side. On the Tomcat side, you have people putting entire servers in their web app, and that becomes difficult when you go to move that onto something that includes those jars. We've got a lot of those things solved, and we have some pretty clever ideas on how to deal with that definitively without having to use things like OSGI. The simple answer is don't put the libraries in the server, add them to the web app unless they have them in the web app already. So a clever little twist, and we'll like to try that out and see how much mileage we can get out of that, and that would avoid huge amounts of complexity like OSGI, crazy class loaders, and things like that. As I mentioned, we really want to keep TomEE simple. So if there's a pragmatic, simple solution, we're going to take that over redesigning a whole new architecture to tackle a simple problem. there are enough of those servers out there. Not that they're bad, they're great. When we released TomEE 1.0 Final, there was a story on InfoQ about it, and people were really, really excited, and some of the vendors showed up and started being a little territorial and threatened, and we came out and just said, we didn't create TomEE because we thought the existing servers were bad. We created TomEE because despite the existence of really awesome choices, people are still trying to turn Tomcat into a Java EE server. And so we just wanted to give them what their actions were showing that they wanted. And so here's some feedback we've gotten about TomEE. And I've taken the server names out because I just think it's crass to bash other servers that can't defend themselves. And it's not the point to say that we're better than somebody. The point of the feedback here is just to say that it's worth checking out. And I hope you take a look at it yourself and judge for your own, if TomEE is good for you. Incidentally, I agree with the third comment the most. It's great in footprint size, great in speed. We're a growing project, and so if you're going to have to take care of yourself a little bit on that regard, there's some things changing there, and I'll mention that. There isn't currently a support company. Actually, I'm in the process of launching one off. So, you can feel free to talk to me after the session, and if you have any questions or you want help with TomEE, definitely help you out. But yeah, we're a growing project. So here's the kind of year we had. So that little blip in the middle there, that's JavaOne last year. And we've just sort of had a really crazy year since then. So you can see the second really big blip is our final, our 1.0 final that we released in April. And that's the one that did it. And our mailing list traffic has kind of gone like this. And that's all the mailing lists. Then this is just the user mailing list. Our commits on the project have gone also, trying to keep up with all the feedback we're getting. And then here's the hard part. The committers on the project have actually stayed the same. So despite all this growth, we're the same number of people. So if you guys have any aspirations to be app server developers, we need you. We're an open source project. Come on board. We're happy to have people. We could use the help. And, that would be fantastic. Apache projects are very simple to get into. You just commit some documentation, you do some patches. Anything that you would do to support yourself, go ahead and do that. And if you want to help some other people out while you're doing that, that gets you commit really quick. So how to help Apache TomEE? Well, code, contribute some code, contribute documentation. As you'll see during this slides, there's quite a large number of features that we have which are not documented. I have like 70 slides. We'll try not to book through those. And the goal of this will be to give you just a really good overview of what's there. Blog, write articles. Those are also really, really, really big helps. You write a blog saying, I tried TomEE out. This is my experience. You don't have to say it was positive. You can say whatever it was. One, we're going to read it, and we're going to, if there's some criticism in there, we're going to fix it. We're going to respond to your blog, say this is what we did to address those concerns. But more than anything, it just shows adoption. It shows, that there are independent voices out there. If we say TomEE's great, that only goes this far. If you say TomEE's great, that goes that far. So if you do try out TomEE and you do like it, blog about it, tweet about it, and if you would, write an article. Those are huge, huge things. Blogs and articles also serve as documentation, so that's a big help as well. So, in fact, better than writing documentation is to blog, which is documentation, and that's great. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, the whole standard stuff. If you're on LinkedIn, make sure and add TomEE to your skills and experiences section. It takes 100 or so people before it shows up as one of their official skills and experiences, so that will help us out. Okay, so how do we make TomEE? That's a really important question. To quote Burger King, we do it like you do it. So when you develop something on Tomcat, you throw some libraries in the library directory, you try to do just that, really, and you don't do any major tinkering with Tomcat, and that's what you want to use, because you want to use Tomcat. So that's exactly what we try to do. That's exactly what we do, in fact. We take Tomcat, we unzip it. So we don't even like do building from jars or anything like that. We grab Tomcat from the website, the Tomcat website, we unzip it, we add in 2 extra comp files. These, in the bin directory, we add some executables simply for convenience. The person who's a committer on the project wrote them because he uses them. They're not critical, they don't need to be there, but they're nice. So if you're on Windows, there's some stuff to do, Windows services and things like that. In the endorsed directory, we have 3 things that's primarily for Java 6, which has some outdated standard libraries. So JavaX annotation resource annotation changed in Java EE 6, but the JVM 6 has an old version of it, so we have to put that into an endorsed directory to override the one that's in the JVM. Same with JAXB. JAXB, 2.1 is required. I can't remember exactly. 2.1 is required for JAXRS and JAXWS in EE 6, but in the VM is 2.0, and so we need to override that. It's either 2.0 and then 2.1 or 2.1 and 2.2. I can't remember the exact versions. But then, of course, in the library directory of TomEE, we add the parts missing for the web profile. So bean validation, that's part of the specification, the EE6 web profile. We got a transaction manager in there, the Java EE API libraries. My faces, OpenEJB, OpenJPA, OpenWebBeans, Quartz, and of course some TomEE jars. So it's pretty basic. This is the one non-drop in a file change that's critical to TomEE. We add a listener because we do all of the work with the Tomcat lifecycle. So when Tomcat starts up, it emits these events saying we're going to start, and when it goes to deploy an application, it says we're going to deploy an application. We're in the middle of deploying an application. We're almost done deploying the application. There's this whole standard lifecycle that Tomcat has, and that's how we integrate into Tomcat, is we finish basically the lifecycle. So when Tomcat boots up and says we're going to deploy a web app, it scans for all the servlets, we scan for all the CDI beans, we scan for all the EJBs, we scan for all the JAXRS stuff. Real basic. We add them to the web app context. In Tomcat terms, that's the standard context. And that's it. So we add that listener, and that's the only really critical thing that we do. We do add a role into the Tomcat users file. That's just for the TomEE web app that we add. It's not critical. You can go ahead and delete that. We add a Java agent, which is used for OpenJPA's runtime enhancement. So JPA, when you implement JPA, you either have to do subclassing like Hibernate does, or you do enhancement like OpenJPA and Eclipse Link do. You do enhancement, you have to change the bytecode of the actual classes. So you either do that at runtime, and then you need a Java agent, or you do it at build time, and then you don't need a Java agent. So if you do build time enhancement with the OpenJPA or Eclipse Link, you don't need the Java agent. You can go ahead and revert that change if you want it. And then this is completely optional. If you're in Java 7, we don't bother putting those endorsed libraries in there that I mentioned because those are part of the Java 7 JVM. Uses the latest version of JAXB and the annotations. So we do remove 3 things. We move the outdated Annotations API. It's in Java EE 7. There's @resource lookup. There's a lookup attribute that was added in Java EE 6. That is not in the Tomcat version of the Annotations API. So we have to remove it, put in one that does have the required lookup attribute, because that's part of passing the TCK. And then similar thing for the EL API. We include that in our Java EE API. We simply don't need it, so we yanked that one. The web app examples, That was just a whim. There's nothing technical that stops it from functioning. We just yanked it to keep the zip size of the server down. Okay, so testing. We, of course, have a ton of our own tests that's growing, but the important tests are the certification tests. There are several thousands of those tests, tens of thousands of certification tests. It takes days to run this test suite. We're a small project. We try to keep everyone as productive as possible, so we don't want open source developers who are contributing their time waiting days to get test results back. So what we did to make it possible to create TomEE quickly is we just went ahead and set that up in EC2. We take these tens of thousands of tests and we split them into a whole bunch of chunks, so like 750 chunks of tests. We throw them on an active MQQ. We launch off a bunch of spot instances. They grab all the tests, they bring it down, they churn away at their test, they send the results back over a JMS topic, and then we get full results of the TCK, 98% of the results of the TCK in an hour and a half, 2 hours. So that was a huge, huge reason that we're able to sort of come out of nowhere and make a certified version of Tomcat. It's really difficult to run the TCK. It's really difficult to pass the TCK. It's a labor of, for us, love, and for everybody else, both love and finance. So yeah, it is not easy to create a JavaOne server, which is why they do not come along very often. And the fact that we're able to do it and do so very little to Tomcat is sort of a mix of the fact that myself and a couple other people in the project have been working on EE servers for more than 10 years. I launched off Geronimo, was one of the founders of Geronimo. Last year, I did 3 servers that were certified: WebSphere CE, Apache Geronimo, and Apache TomEE. So I know the tests quite well by now after 10 years. And so that was really sort of the thing that made it possible to push something like TomEE to completion. Yeah, and so as a result, we're certified on EC2 with 3. We run it on 3 of the instance AMI types. I'm sure it works on all of them, but those are the ones that we try. The T1 Micro is the most impressive because it's a very small machine. It's a 613 megabyte of memory machine. And when we run it, we only use 64 megabytes of memory. We don't change the default JVM settings. So TomEE actually passes the full JavaOne 6 web profile with the default set memory settings. We don't increase beyond into 100 some. So it's pretty crazy. At one point, I'd like to see if I can get it to pass on a cell phone because, why not, right? It's a bit of a claim to fame for us. It's pretty cool. So the results are we have a web profile certified server that is everything you like about Tomcat. It's 27 megs, the web profile version. Boots and runs just fine with 64 megabytes of memory, excuse me. Works with all the Tomcat tools, Eclipse, IntelliJ, YourKit. JRebel announced support for Apache TomEE a week after we did our final release. Well, that's because they just, changed Tomcat to TomEE, and look, we added TomEE support, So it was pretty fun. And then New Relic, and so yeah, it's very tight. So the next session I'll do a little demo titled, Look Mom, Smaller Web Apps, or alternatively, do these jars make my apps look big? If you ever watch Rocky and Bullwinkle, you know the double titles are fun. Okay, we'll pray that the gods of demos are with me. All right. Ooh, okay. And font size. I don't think I've ever done this looking over my shoulder before. We'll see how much that affects my typing. Eclipse. Okay. Eclipse is extracting. I'm too impatient to wait for it. So I'm going to go ahead and now extract TomEE. And I'm going to do the plus version. And we'll check Eclipse. We'll open that up. And we'll see how it. Okay. All right. All right, so we're just going to create a this is difficult. Create a workspace in the temp directory here where I'm extracting everything. All right, so who uses Tomcat in Eclipse? Fantastic. So I was tempted to show how that works with Eclipse, but clearly I don't need to do that. All right, so these will be the same steps. Oh, well, they've split the menu, so you can't see the menu options. That's sort of unfortunate. Okay, so I'm going to create a new dynamic web project. Is it possible to do that? Oh, really? Yeah, let's try that out. Mirrors arrangement, mirror displays. Fantastic. That's so much easier. Thank you very much. What was your name? Alan. Okay, Karthik and Alan. You get honorable mentions in my session later on today. Okay. All right. So, perfect. We don't need the performance monitor. All right, so I'm just going to create a project named JavaOne. I'm going to create a new runtime. Click Apache Tomcat 7. Next. And we'll just optionally add a little TomEE tag there for it. And then I put it in the temp directory. So we'll go to Apache TomEE Plus. And then finish. Okay, and then we can finish our project. So this is the same thing we always do in Tomcat. It's no different. And now I'll go ahead and create a servlet. Hello world or servlet, no. Okay. We get all this useless boilerplate code, which we'll just delete it. Okay. Content type text. Oh, yes, I didn't even think about that. I was trying to get going fast, and why don't we do like this? Oh. Is that a little bit better? I can go even larger. I do not know how to increase the font size in Eclipse. We'll try this. There we go. Much more readable? Fantastic. Thank you for that. Okay, so we go, and then we just say run as. Oh, thank you. Jeez. Yeah. See, we worked in Agile anyway. We thought we could escape it. We can't. Quite a lot of pairs, though. Okay, so there we go. Hello, Tommy. And that just booted up a little pretty quick. That's 914 milliseconds. The web profile is slightly faster. This one includes JMS and CXF and things like that. The web profile one's about 800 milliseconds. The 1.0 was about 600. We added some stuff. It's a little slower. I got to do some performance tuning and get it back down. Our goal is to just always keep it around that fast speed. So let's do something we can't do in Tomcat. We'll say new class, hello bean. We'll make it a singleton. Add a method on there. Called message. We'll return, not recompile. All right. And then in our servlet, we can get that injected standardly. So when we do that, Tom, that's right. I always forget the command for doing the automatic import. Oh, and I saved it, so it's going ahead and already redeployed that. Bean get message. We'll save that, and it should redeploy at some point here. We'll go over to our... Did it already redeploy? There it is. What did I do wrong? The demo gods are not with me today. Name already bound. Yep. Demo gods are not with me today. Well, darn it. Let's try something. I'm using trunk, which is never a smart idea. That's the one release today. And we'll just move that to. And then we'll start that again. Okay. That's what I get for using trunk code. I should just use the released binary. Anyway, so that totally worked. Okay, so there we go. We have an EJB right in there, and it's great. Same thing will happen with CDI. If we had a beans XML to the web apps directory, we'll get CDI support. This is the plus version, so if I want to just go ahead and make this a web service, And I'll also complete my EJB. Need to add that view now that I've added a web service. Do you want to restart? Yes, that's fine. And there we go, WSDL. I added one annotation, now I have a web service. And I can do the same thing with JAX-RS. I add @path on the top, and I can get JAX-RS. What is it? WSRS. Come on. I just need to pick a path. We'll say rest, hello, and at get GWS. Get, there we go. Okay, and now I need to redeploy. Okay, and then we'll go back to the browser, and we'll say rest, hello, and now I got a REST response. I mean, how long would you spend hunting down libraries to add this stuff to Tomcat? Would be a lot more than 800 milliseconds, I'm pretty sure. So, you know, it's difficult to justify cobbling all the stuff together yourself because it's better than Java EE. I mean, the whole reason we created TomEE, like I said, was to try and remove that thinking. The actions of building up your own Java EE server is really what's happening when you put all the stuff on Tomcat. You're not just using Tomcat, you're adding all the stuff to Tomcat, which is great. And so we decided we'll add the stuff to Tomcat for you, and we'll actually certify it so you don't even have to worry about that. And so, I mean, you know, it's not entirely straightforward. Oh, now I got this thing in the other window. Come on. Oh, all right, well, whatever. I can't see my other window, so. Awesome, there we go. All right, so the perils of doing it yourself. There are a few of them that might not be so obvious. One of them is that when you add all these libraries, in the specifications, when you add annotations, we really love scanning. We don't want you to have to put a location of a class file in an XML file. We want to just find it in the class path. Well, that requires scanning, okay? So you throw all the stuff in the web app, including the libraries. So you throw OpenJPA in there, you throw all your Jersey, you throw all this stuff in there. You throw my faces in there. Well, guess what happened? Jersey is going to scan OpenJPA, and it's going to scan my faces, and it's going to scan all your stuff looking for REST services. OpenJPA is going to scan all those libraries as well, looking for JPA entity beans. My faces is going to scan all those things again, looking for JSF managed beans. And if you have any EJB libraries in there, that is going to scan for all the stuff looking for EJBs. If you have CDI, wow, then you're really going to get scanning because CDI doesn't even want you to configure with things, even in annotation, they're even more permissive. So they're going to actually load all those classes into memory and make them CDI beans. So when you add these things all together side by side, what you have are completely disconnected, not working in tandem pieces of code that want to do all the work all themselves over again. It's really interesting. There, Mark Struberg, he's one of the main developers of Open Web Beans, and he's of course a huge Tomcat fan and a huge Open Web Beans fan, and he has an app that he's been developing with my faces, Open Web Beans, and OpenJP on Tomcat. And he's one of those die-hard, I hate Java EE kind of guys, and we got him to try TomEE, and we're like, so did you like it? And he didn't want to respond. He's like, my app was faster. It's like, well, that's because that's the benefit of tight integration, We don't have it down to the science where not everything's going to scan, like OpenJPA will still scan. But we have most things boiled down so we don't have to, so we can completely avoid those repeat scans. And it does improve the startup time, like the web apps, significantly. Then the fact that a lot of the libraries that you would need to include in your web app are now on the server, so they're now not scanned. So these things really affect the startup time significantly. What I got for timeline? Can't see. Okay, so another thing that has an effect of doing it yourself with this style is that these particular libraries will load all the stuff into memory. That takes a lot of memory space. Your third-party libraries get loaded into every web app that you choose to put them in. So if you're putting OpenJPA into 3 web apps in Tomcat, well then you have OpenJPA in memory 3 times in Tomcat. You put in the server lib directory and you end up with it once in the parent class path. So all the third-party libraries you throw in your web apps, they do add significantly to the weight on the JVM because you have them all X number of times. You put them in the server lib directory, you cut down on the duplication. That's where we put these particular classes. And it does cut down significantly on the duplication. There's also there's another thing that is a false understanding. There's a false security when you add some of these components into Tomcat that you have a complete web profile. In fact, you do not. If you add OpenJPA, you're missing a huge portion of the JPA specification, which is container-managed entity managers. And these are the entity managers that will, if this servlet over here and this Java bean over there have both a reference to an entity manager, with container-managed entity managers, they will get the same entity manager because they're in the same transaction. And if you do resource local JPA, then you have to pass that entity manager around either through the session or something. All that passing is taken care of you with container managed entity managers. So is the rollback logic and the commit logic. So OpenJP doesn't implement that because it's not something they really can do. They're not a container. Similarly, Open Web Beans only runs about 60% of the CDI TCK because the other 40% has to do with integration between JSF or EJB or things like that. CDI is very much an integration technology. So there's all these portions that they don't run. So if you add Weld or Open Web Beans into your web app, you're still not getting all of CDI. So that's another thing there. And then Tomcat itself has elected to not implement a lot of things, and it's fine, but they're useful things. At data source definition, so you can define your data source in your web app via an annotation and deploy that in your web app, not have to muck with any server XML files, not supported by Tomcat. JBoss, for more than a decade, has had global JNDI, which is very useful, not present in Tomcat. It was added to the specifications in EU6. Tomcat didn't implement it. So these are things that they've elected not to do, and these are gaps that we fill, with TomEE. Another thing is that even if you do add OpenJPA and you add Open Web Beans and all these other things, you can't use like @persistence context on a servlet and get a JPA entity manager injected. This is a level of integration that only happens when something is aware to inject those things and put them into JNDI. These are the kind of things that JBoss does when they use Tomcat inside JBoss. They finish these parts. And then Spring, of course, finishes these parts by doing all the injection themselves. But all this sort of injection support doesn't happen when you just throw the libraries together in a web app. And then also, you cannot discount the fact that if all of you have custom stacks and they use various components, if you find a bug and someone else finds a bug, how do you share that? It's like, if only there was some way we could put all that code together in one project and share that code and use that server. We might call it something like Tomcat Shared Enterprise, or I can't think of a good name for it. But anyway, that would be great if there's a project like that, because then we could all save some time. And also, we run hundreds of hours of tests on our binaries. As you saw, the production one was pretty good. The trunk version, not so good. These things happen all the time. Anytime you upgrade a library in your web app, you run the risk of breaking something very fundamental and very simple. And unless you have tons of tests to protect against that, there's just a lot of wasted time. And then, of course, no portability is a big trick. You can move a web app from JBoss to Glassfish fairly easily. You can move them from WebLogic to WebSphere and all that kind of stuff. But moving one of those apps to Tomcat, that requires a lot of reworking. So now you can actually do that. With TomEE, it's completely certified. You can actually move an app from WebLogic, WebSphere, or JBoss Glassfish to Tomcat, the Tomcat Enterprise version. And you can move it away if you don't like it. I don't think we have too much time, but just a moment on configuration, which is the server XML in Tomcat still works. We don't mess with it at all. All the resources and things you configure in Tomcat work. We don't disable any part of Tomcat. In fact, we go to the level of EJB security and JAX-WS security work on Tomcat realms. So you can have your JDBC realm implementation, whatever realm you have, you'll get a completely integrated security environment on top of those Tomcat concepts. It's a very, very, very key point. So if you drop in a JAX-WS implementation on Tomcat, you do not get security integration with Tomcat realms. You got to go, how are we going to solve security for ourselves? And then you have to go maybe look somewhere else for some sort of security library. Or you got to figure out how to integrate them on top of the Tomcat security support. Well, we did that work for you. And if you use EJBs on Tomcat, when you have @roles allowed, that also works on top of the Tomcat security roles. So it's completely integrated security environment on Tomcat security. You know, it's a really key part. You can put all your stuff in your context XML. That's fine if you want to have a data source in context XML and then inject that into a CDI bean or an EJB or JAX-RS, JAX-WS. That injection works just fine. Normally you wouldn't get that injection unless you found some way to wire it up. Tomcat will inject into servlets and JSPs or servlets, but it won't inject into JAX-WS things and such like that. So data sources that you configure in your context XML will be injectable into JAX-RS and JAX-WS components and all the other components. We add additional config files because there are things that Tomcat isn't prepared to configure, like JMS and things like that. So just to give you a quick overview, that's what a config file looks like for TomEE. It very much is meant to be simple. We try not to do tons of nested XML and make you follow these huge chains. We want to roll it up and just give you the most important stuff right in front in a very flat style, so you don't have to deal with kind of like Spring-like config files where you have to follow one object's reference to another object's reference. And it's just, you know, that's great for development, but that's not good for management, for managing servers. Our properties are not case sensitive, so if you mess up a case, that's totally fine. If you use a property that doesn't exist, we will tell you that property does not exist. You can cut out as much as you want, so we would simply supply defaults for everything. So your config file really actually only needs to show what you want to be different You don't have to show all of the options. So really, you can rely on all defaults, and then what you have in your config file is very obviously the things that are unique to your environment. So it's a nice little feature there. You can get very small, very, very small, and that's because if you deploy an application that has like JMS in it, and you don't configure anything, it's pretty obvious that you're going to want a topic. If you have a @resource topic, and the @resource is foo, we're going to create you a topic called foo because you want it. And if you have a data source reference, you didn't create a data source, we'll get you a default data source. That's actually going to be part of EE6 or 7. So all of this sort of, you don't have to configure anything in TomEE. You deploy your app, and you only have to configure it when you want something to be different than the defaults. That would typically be data sources. And then really, practically everything else, you can rely on the defaults. So it's very easy just to try it out, because you can just throw your app in there, and if it works, it works. You don't have to spend a whole day adding all the things that are required for your app just to see if it would work. What we want is for it to work, for you to be able to try it, get a good feeling. Is it worth putting more time in? Yes, no, Another thing is that really annoys me personally is all these timeouts config files are in like milliseconds. All right, so can someone tell me what 1 hour and 42 minutes is in milliseconds? All right, you have to whip out a calculator. But can you tell me what 1 hour and 42 seconds is in plain English? Of course, it's 1 hour and 42 seconds. So all of our timeouts, we're really proud about this. We put a lot of work into it. You can configure it in plain English. We will just do the math, figure it for you, and then that's your timeout. Saves you lots of time, and saves you bugs, because when you're really tired and you've been working a whole lot, it's easy to do the millisecond stuff wrong. You slice out, type it wrong, slice a 0 off, and you got a whole different timeout than you might have otherwise wanted. And you can put comments in config files. You can put all this stuff in the application itself. There's a meta-inf resources file. Throw all the same things into this meta-inf resources file, throw that in the web app, deploy that, and you can put all your data sources, all the configuration right there in the web app. If you hate XML, you can do it via system properties. So there's a conf.system.properties file. We have a properties syntax for absolutely everything we have an XML syntax for. So there's a 100% matchup between properties and XML. So if you like properties better, because they're easy to grep, you can do that. Also, you can put those properties in plain old Java system properties, and they will find their way to where they're supposed to be. So if you want to put all of your configuration, not just outside the app or outside the server, but like in the script that boots the server, you can do that. You can combine them all. So here I've declared my transaction manager on the top, I've declared my data source, but I've actually specified the tricky parts that change more often outside the application and outside the server. I specified the username and password in my startup script via system variable in my environment. This is extremely experimental. It's a strongly typed version, not too much to show on that. We do have Arquillian adapters. Who uses Arquillian? Yeah, okay. I suggest you all check it out. They won a Duke's Choice Award last year for it's an amazing testing framework for Java EE applications. Really go ahead and take a look at that. We have a Maven plugin. Who uses Maven? Pretty good, about half the room. If you want to have just a plain Maven POM file, no code in there, run Maven with this plugin, and we will extract the TomEE server. We will add the web apps to the web apps directory, add the libraries that you want to the libraries directory, boot it up, and run it. So basically, you can get provisioning with just a little XML file via Maven plugin. And of course, Maven's very nice. It will download your web apps for you if you've published them. You can do some pretty amazing provisioning with this. It's great. Feature requests on that are great. We'll take them. It's pretty good. One aspect of TomEE we're particularly proud of, and something we're growing throughout the server, is that we try and save you as much time as possible. If you make simple mistakes, which you do, and I do, and that's why we have a lot of this stuff, I go to make examples, and even I get them wrong, and I wrote some of the text in the specification, and I can't remember. So if that's the case, then what hope does anyone else have, you know? Can anyone spot how many errors are wrong with this EJB? So here's the bean class. And then there's the interface. All right? Looks pretty kosher. Well, these are the problems with that bean. You can't use the init and remove on a stateless bean because stateless beans can't be removed. The @resource annotation was used to get an entity manager injected. The appropriate annotation is @persistence context. Same for @AnyManager factory. The appropriate annotation is entity or persistence unit. The @resource in the top was used to declare a reference to a data source, but we didn't say it was type data source. So that was a problem. So all these things are typically what most servers, if they find one problem, they'll go, this one thing was wrong, they'll kick it back to you, and then you fix that one thing, you build everything, you deploy it again, they go, the next thing was wrong, and you repeat that all day long. We try and give it to you in a compiler style, everything up front, because odds are if you made the mistake one place, you made it a bunch of other places, and you could fix that all at once, all in one go. And it's a thing to save you time that's not necessarily speed related, doesn't have to do with how fast the server is, or watching your back. And we go out of our way, so if you put annotations where normally they wouldn't be found, we look in places that they're commonly misplaced, like interfaces. You can't put annotations like security annotations or transaction annotations in interfaces like this. It just doesn't work. So those are part of the things that we'll say, we're ignoring this annotation because it wasn't in the right place. If you have two interfaces and each of them have different sets of annotations that conflict, when you implement that on the bean, there's no way to resolve that. So at a standards level, we just say, you can't do that. So we tell you, you can't do that. You want to extend TomEE in your @resources XML file, you can put your own Java beans. And here we say we have a class name on this resource. That is injectable via the same @resource annotation that you can inject. I think we're done with time here. Yep. All right. Let me just cut to the end here. All right, so I hope you try out TomEE. And my JavaOne exclusive offer is that if you want to port an app to TomEE and you're not sure if that's worth your time or if you're going to have issues, contact me. If you're willing to write a blog post about it, I will help you out directly. So it's a little exchange. If you're willing to write your experience and blog that, I'm happy to help you out. We help people all the time on the open source mailing list, so this is not too much of a bother. That's my email information up there. I do have cards up here, and if you're interested in using TomEE like in your work and you want a demo, I will help with that too. So I'm at your disposal. So go ahead and take that information down. And thank you so very much. And I really hope that you like TomEE.